Welcome to Getting on Google, part of the Google Starter series on businessinsights.co.uk. Everyone wants to be number one on Google. What is number one? Well, for clarity, if you look at this search results from Google for business websites, you can see that there are 3 paid adverts at the top, nicely phrased as sponsored links, and a series of sponsored links that appear down the side. So unless you're going to pay to be in the advertising, it's this section that we're looking at. This is the free section. It doesn't cost you anything to be there other than the work, the time or the money that it costs you to employ somebody to help get you into this kind of position. Sometimes it'll happen naturally. You may well be lucky. Other times you have to do a little bit of work at it. Throughout this course we'll show you how to do some of the work that's involved, and we'll guide you through step by step some of the things that can improve your rankings if you aren't lucky enough to get a number one for your phrase. So what are the steps in getting your site onto Google? Well, Google takes a series of steps in terms of the way it finds your site and the way it puts it into the search results. First, obviously, you create your site. Then Google needs to index your site. Basically, they send a little software program to look at your site, to take the information on one or more pages from your site, probably not the whole lot in one go. That information is then put into a big database, so then you're indexed. At that point, though, you may not actually appear for very many searches. As you'll see, the first thing that tends to happen is that you appear for very key searches, which I'll show you in a minute. After that, Google then goes through a process of ranking you, of evaluating what your site is about, analysing the phrases that are on that site, and then working out how it's going to actually position you in their search results for different searches. Fairly shortly after that, it goes through a period of re-evaluating you, and some of the gleam of you being a new site tends to disappear, and you may well find that your site just disappears for a while. But it goes through a process of re-evaluating, and that continues over time. So let's go a little bit further. First of all, let's look at whether your site is indexed or not. So how can you tell whether you're indexed or not? Well, as I said, the way it works is Google sends out, they've got to find you first, so once they've found your site, either through a link on somebody else's site or some of the other techniques that we can show you, it will then actually start putting you in its index in its database. One of the ways of telling whether you actually are in their database and whether you're indexed or not is to type in the Google search bar, type in your web address, so www, whatever your site is, .co.uk.com, and click search, and you should hopefully see a search result with you in it. Another way of doing it is to do one of the special commands that Google has, which is site : and then your web address, www.whatever.com. That will show you, that command is there to show you the pages that Google knows about on your site and to list some of those to you. Again, that gives you a good clue that you're indexed. If you're not indexed, there are steps that you need to take to get Google to know about you, and we'll cover those in a later video. So, assuming that you've now managed to get your site indexed, the next steps are to see whether you actually are into that main database that is used to pull out rankings and to decide how people's sites appear in those all-important top 10 listings for when somebody does a search. So how can you find out whether Google is actually ranking you or not? There's a couple of different things that you can do. First of all, you could visit this website. It's one of the many set of tools out there. That link there is a short link which will take you to the right side, which just has a rather large link address, so just done that for you to make it easy. If you type that in, you'll see on the screen a little box like that where you can type in your web address. Don't put any of the HTTP : blah 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 stuff, just start with www. Don't put any slashes on the end for most of these things. You'll also need to input a little captcha text down there, one of these things where you have to mimic what the graphic is below, which is designed to stop computer programs making use of their service. And when you've done that, click the button and you'll see some search results a bit like this. Now Google has one of its features is it has a thing called PageRank, which it gives every page a number from 0 to 10. Equally well, there's a starting point which is unranked, not having a number at all. For each page, it's trying to determine how popular and how important it thinks that page is. So, as you can see there, the bbc.co.uk has a rank of 8, which is really, really, really good. Most of your sites will probably end up being 1s to begin with, and you might well get up to 3, 4, 5, possibly 6 if you really work at it. To begin with, though, you'll end up being unranked, like the one at the top. It has nothing on it at all. There's no number, no nothing, and the bar has nothing on it at all. Once it's actually decided to rank you in some way, you'll be given a 0, and you'll see that there's probably a little 1, in fact there's no little bar because it's 0. It doesn't look much different. So you have to look at that number. There are different ways of seeing that, but basically you'll either get a number or you'll get a blank or you'll get an unranked. If it's blank or unranked, it normally means that you haven't actually been put into that. You haven't moved on to that next step yet. The other thing you can do is actually do some checking on Google. What you need to do is you need to go to Google, do a search for something which is fairly unique on your site. In my case, businessinsights.co.uk. The insights being spelt in that particular way is quite unique. So when I do a search for that, again you can see that my site comes up. You need it to be unique so that you've got a chance of finding it in the early results, even if you're not ranking very well for things at the moment. One thing to bear in mind is that really you're competing not against what you would traditionally consider to be competition, but you're competing against anyone who is interested in that particular phrase. So in this case, if you look at the top there, it's saying that I've got 9,000 competing other pages that have the same words, business and insight, spelled the way I spelt it, on the page. That's normally what that means. However, that isn't really good enough. And if you haven't found your site by using this method, you really need to look at just doing this little trick. Put the phrase that you're looking for in quotes. That tells Google to go and find websites that have that phrase with those words consecutive, not just on the page somewhere. As you can see now, from a competition point of view, that's gone down to 23, which is the reason that my site, when it was really new, was able to get a number 1 ranking for the phrase Business Insights without the quotes. So that gives you a little bit of a very simple way of measuring what the competition's like, but there are obviously a lot more factors than that, which again we'll look at later. So going back to the steps again. So what tends to happen with a new site is that after you've got ranked, after a few days, Google will go off and reevaluate you again. So what will happen? Well, you might stay very high up, or wherever you are on the search, you might just stay there. You might start up quite high, and you might disappear after a week or so, and then eventually you'll return again. You might not appear at all, even though you're indexed. It might be that you just can't see yourself, you can't find yourself, or you might never get indexed. So we might have even not got to that stage yet, and it's pointless trying to do a search for yourself if you're not indexed. So how do you solve these problems? Well, whatever your the issues that you have, they all require you to do similar things, which is basically build some more links to your site, get some more other websites linking to you, add some more content to your site and tell Google and the other search engines about it. Look at something called Google Sitemaps, which is basically a method for telling Google about all the pages on your site, and also you get traffic to come to your site by other means. So all of these we'll cover in a lot more detail in this series and another series